Democrat Patrick Murphy of Connecticut launched a filibuster, even though it's really not a filibuster. It's like a non-filibuster filibuster. I'll explain what that means a little later. But he did it here on the issue of guns in the wake of the Orlando terrorist attack and mass shooting. Let's watch.
Mr. President, I'm prepared to stand on this floor and talk about the need for this body to come together on keeping terrorists away from getting guns through those two measures for frankly as long as I can, because I know that we can come together on this issue. And I know that there's other really important business to be done here. I know other people have amendments that they'd like to call up. I know that there are other issues that senators would like to raise. But having come through the experience of Newtown, I've had enough. It's been 4 years and nothing has been done, despite the fact that 90% of the American public wants us to act. The vast majority of gun owners want us to expand the reach of background checks. Polls suggest that 80% of Americans believe that people on the terrorist watch list shouldn't be able to buy guns. There's no controversy out there about these two provisions. We can work it out. We can work it out today. We got a majority of the Senate to support Manchin-Toomey. That legislation still exists. Senator Schumer has introduced other legislation. Senator Feinstein has introduced a bill to keep terrorists from getting guns. I'm certain there are ways that it can be made better. But as someone who represents the community of Sandy Hook, which is still grieving today, I'm going to stand on this floor and talk about our experience in Sandy Hook, Orlando's experience, the need to come together on this issue of making sure that dangerous people who have designs on mass murder don't get dangerous weapons, as long as I can, so that we can give time to try to figure out a path forward to bring this body together on the issue of changing our gun laws so that they reflect the will of 90% of the American people.
So the reason I say this is a non-filibuster filibuster is that the Democrats are in the minority right now. They're not blocking a bill, they're just urging passage of gun reform. So it's technically not the same thing, but the idea was let's talk as long as we can to try to force the Republicans to do something and try to just, shed light on this issue, broadly speaking. And they ended up speaking for over 14 hours. It was the 9th longest filibuster in U.S. history. Now, again, it's technically not a filibuster, but it's something that I support either way. And my argument to the Democrats would be, why didn't you do this earlier? This is something you could go back and watch the videos. I screamed about this after, I don't know, one of multiple mass shootings. I mean, whether it was Sandy Hook or whether it was some of the other ones. Unfortunately, we've covered so many because there's been so many. And you could have done this when you actually had the majority, and then it would have been more effective. So what happened is, after, I think it was Sandy Hook, you had the proposal of just a watered-down background check bill. It started out with an assault weapons ban and a high-cap mag ban, and then it became a universal background check bill, and then that became all the way watered down to just a minor background check bill that expands background checks a little bit more. The Republicans blocked it. They filibustered it, and then they bragged about it on Twitter. What did the Democrats do? They ran away with their tail between their legs. Instead of going out there and doing this then, when you have the majority in the Senate, you could force it through because you can crush them in the framing and in the argument and in the media and make it so that if they don't buckle, they lose in a landslide in the next election. And of course, that didn't happen. The Republicans won in the next election because the Democrats suck at framing and marketing and getting their message out. So they proposed this bill once, then they backed away. Then they never did it again. They ran away with their tail between their legs. No, that's when you go out there and hit the talk shows and you say, ask the Republicans why they're fascists, why they don't even listen to the will of their own voters. 90% of the American people want a universal background check. 90%. A majority of Republicans and a majority of NRA members want a universal background check bill. Why are they blocking it? Why are they blocking it? You go out there, you keep hitting those talking points. Go over the top with it, man. Say, look, as a direct result of what they're doing, blocking common sense gun reform, we're going to have more people that die in the United States of America every single year. 32,000 gun deaths there are every year in America. Actually, more than that now. So if we do sane gun reform, maybe we can catch up to the rest of the modern world. Or maybe we just cut that number in half. But guess what? You're still saving thousands of lives. But they didn't make that argument. They buckled. They ran away with their tail between their legs. And you wait until the next mass shooting, and then they come out there and finally, they do some sort of a non-filibuster filibuster. And it's still not enough in my view. They don't understand that. So when you have the overwhelming majority of the American people with you, you could either outright get the legislative win, or if you don't get the legislative win, you can use that issue to coast to victory in the next election, so you have a supermajority, so then you get to pass whatever the fuck you want. But again, the Democrats don't get that. If they lose, they just go, oh, I guess I lost. Did you know the background check bill, it failed with, I think it was 56 votes in favor. You're like, wait a second, there's 100 votes in the Senate, so how did 56? That means you win, right? No, you needed a supermajority to get a pass because they just default filibuster everything the Republicans do. So they're like, okay, I'm just filibustering now. And by the way, the filibuster rules are such that you literally don't even need to actually filibuster to filibuster. You just have to say, I am filibustering, and then that's it. They changed the filibuster rules. So that's unbelievable and unheard of. Just like you declare, no, my opponents need a supermajority to get anything done. Well, hey, jackasses, talk about these facts in the media, because when you talk about them, I'm sure you guys, the American people, they're like, wait, what? That's how it works? That's fucking madness. That is madness. So talk about that. Speak about how your opponents are fascist. Speak about how more people will die because of them. Speak about how even the majority of NRA members are against them. Because at the end of the day, why are they doing this? Why do they block any kind of gun reform at all? Because the leadership of the NRA, so not the members who are actually for some forms of gun control, the leadership of the NRA takes money from gun manufacturers, the people who make money from guns. And then they give that money to the Republican politicians, and there are strings attached. Hey, we're giving you this money, but no, you can't be for any gun reform at all. So even though the majority of the NRA wants it, even though the majority of Republicans want it, the overwhelming majority of the American people, the gun manufacturers make their money from guns, no reform whatsoever, or we don't give you money. So we'll give you money, but you got to do our bidding. And their bidding is fundamentally at odds with everybody else in the country. So not only would I have done this filibuster and calling for universal background checks, I also would have done this filibuster, and I would have went further, man. Because honestly, that's not enough. That's not enough. So not only do we need universal background checks, as of right now, 40% of gun purchases in the U.S. have no background check associated with them whatsoever. It's this thing called the gun show loophole, where you can go there and vendors can sell without doing a background check. There was a great expose of this. I think it was on 60 Minutes or something. 40% of gun purchases, no background check. That's crazy. So you need universal background checks. I would ban high-capacity magazines and limit it to like 5 bullets or something like that. Because yes, the fewer bullets you can shoot, and if you have to reload, people can tackle you in between some sort of mass shooting. I mean, even if it's to save a few lives, isn't that worth it? Why is that not worth it? I have a right to have to shoot 9,000 bullets at once. No, you don't. You don't. We can regulate that. Just like you can't have a nuclear weapon, just like you can't have a biological weapon, just like you can't have a fucking military-grade helicopter or tank, like you can't have a bazooka, like you can't have a grenade launcher. Yeah, we can regulate that too. Sorry. So you ban high-capacity magazines. I'd ban certain kinds of guns. Certain kinds of guns that it's obvious are not necessary. I'm not anti-hunting. I'm not anti-gun. People can have guns, but they can't be certain kinds. That's not unreasonable. That's not something that's crazy. Okay? And we know that a lot of these are used in these massive mass shootings. And I would also do a giant gun buyback program, where, again, not gun confiscation. I'm not somebody who wants to ban guns. I think that goes way too far. You could do a buyback program, though, where you make people an offer they can't refuse. A buyback program is very common. It's happened in many places around the world at different points in history, and you make it so that people want to turn in all their old guns and stuff like that. So you limit the number of guns in circulation, which in turn limits the number of gun deaths. This is just what the stats bear out, guys. And then also, I would do a system where there is some sort of testing and permits. Now, this is where people say, but why have a right? A Second Amendment right? No, read the fucking thing. You actually don't have an individual right to own a gun. Now, again, I wouldn't do gun confiscation, but when you read it, it says a well-regulated militia. The word regulated is right in there. So, of course, you can regulate guns. The word regulated is right in the amendment. And again, they're talking about a militia. And again, this was at a time where there were fucking muskets where it took an hour and a half to reload the fucking thing. We're way beyond muskets now. So, and then I haven't even brought up the fact that the well-regulated militias they're referring to in the Second Amendment are slave patrols. If you read the history of the Second Amendment, the debates were over Virginia joining the Union, and as a concession to Virginia, they wanted to allow their slave patrols to patrol the northern border and be armed in case the slaves wanted to escape north to be free. Virginia was a slave state. North of Virginia was free. They were afraid that all their slaves would rush the border to the north because it was a majority slave state. So they wanted to give them well-regulated militias with weapons to prevent that from happening. That's how Virginia was convinced to join the Union. So it was about slave patrols, but again, separate conversation for a separate day. Bottom line is, yes, I would set up some form of testing and permits in order to have guns. And no, I don't think that's crazy. I think that makes sense. We have gun anarchy right now, and as the Harvard meta-analysis proved, more guns does not equal more peace. More guns equals more gun homicides, more gun deaths. So the right wing has their theory where they say, no, there are more good people than bad people, so that means if you arm everybody, the bad guys are outnumbered, and then there's fewer gun deaths. Yay! Except when you look at the data, that doesn't fucking happen. We are already the most heavily armed modern nation. Guess what? We also have the most gun deaths of any modern nation. That's linked. There's a connection there. Over 32,000 gun deaths a year. Other modern nations, about 100, because they have much stricter gun control. Now, for the 900th time, I don't favor confiscation. I favor regulation. I just want to be smart about it. So I do support what the Democrats are doing here. I unfortunately don't think it's going to be effective, and I think they should have started fighting for this a long, long time ago.